Hey everyone, this is Elaine Loh, and you're watching the TV Writer Podcast.
My name is Gray Jones, and I want to welcome you to the TV Writer Podcast, partner of Script Magazine, episode 112 for September 22nd, 2020. Well, I do have to apologize. I did think that I was going to be restarting the podcast just after Labor Day. Work got in the way and some other unforeseen circumstances, but we are back now with weekly episodes, and I'm going to do my absolute best to keep these weekly episodes going. I do have a great interview to give you today with Elaine Loh. She is a writer, actor, short film director, feature writer, a whole bunch of other stuff. She's staffed on Gossip Girl and Dynasty. She was part of the HBO Writing Fellowship, and so there's a lot of great stuff in the interview. I think you're going to enjoy it, and why don't we roll? Well, this is great, and I'm so pleased to be here with Elaine Loh, film and TV writer, actor, short film director, who has written on such shows as Gossip Girl and Dynasty. How are you doing, Elaine?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And I really am fascinated about your story. First of all, your first acting credit was on Chuck, which I have a special interest in, of course, because my Chuck podcast. But you sort of took a roundabout way to get into TV writing, and I want to learn all about it. First, let's start with your origins. You were born in Singapore, grew up in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and then moved to Massachusetts. How old were you when you moved?
I was about 12 years old.
12 years old. And then you ended up going to Brown for psychology and math, which were you pursuing a career in that and then shifted, or what was that all about?
That is a great question. I think I went to school, I was always a pretty good student. And so it always felt like, well, if you do this well, then you go here. And if you do that well, then you go there. And so because I went to an Ivy League school, I kind of thought, well, I should probably go to law school or business school. But when I graduated, I was like, wait, I don't have to do those things. My life up until that point always seemed so linear. And it seemed kind of crazy, though, to try one of those things that I didn't feel super passionately about, and that was a lot of money and effort for something that I wasn't sure I really wanted to do. And a friend of mine at the time actually was like, well, the only thing you really seem to like doing a lot is being an actor. Like, why don't you try that? And I was like, nah, it never occurred to me that you could actually you could have a career in the arts. That was just not even on my radar, even though I loved performing, I loved watching, but it didn't click, right? That you could maybe make a living this way,
Yeah.
And so, that's why I studied psychology and math, and I thought I was going to go in a completely different direction until that one fateful conversation that changes your whole life. And then I was like, well, I shouldn't quit before I try, right? So I decided to try, and I was an actor for a long time, and it went well enough to keep me here and keep me trying, but it was not good enough to keep me satisfied or paid
right.
enough, And so really I started writing, I think, out of necessity and frankly selfish needs, that I was like, I'm not getting the types of roles I want, and maybe I should create my own. And, I was like, maybe I'm not good enough as an actor, or maybe I've never been given a chance to do something that I really click with, So that's when I decided to write.
And so how did you learn the craft in terms of writing? I know you wrote a lot of short films. You entered a lot of contests and placed in a lot of contests. Actually, I should read some of these if you don't mind. You were named on the coveted Young and Hungry list as one of the top 25 screenwriters to watch by the International Screenwriters Association. You've had scripts placed in the world-renowned Page Awards, Silver Prize, Austin Film Festival 3 times, Final Draft Big Break in the top 10, Tracking Board Launchpad in the top 50, the ISA Grand Prize, and second round of Sundance Episodic Lab twice. So obviously you were entering a lot of these contests. Tell me about that time.
Sure. So a lot of people go, wow, you really became a writer very quickly. And the truth is, it's a yes and no. I read so many scripts as an actor, and all qualities of scripts, right? Like
Yeah.
the really terrible and the really amazing. And so I watched a ton of TV, because as an actor, you watch a lot of TV because when you audition for a show, you need to know the tone of the show, right? Like you need to know, like, what are they really going for here? So all of those things that I did as an actor for 15 years, frankly, was the beginning of my education as a writer. So even though I've only been a writer a short amount of time, like, I banked all that knowledge going into it. So when I started writing, it actually felt like, oh, this is the thing that's been missing all these years, you know? It just really clicked for me kind of quickly. And so, but I was scared to start writing. So that's why I wrote a lot of shorts and kind of built my way up from shorter things to longer things as I gained confidence that, like, I could do it. You know, I mean, just to give you a clue as to how much of not a writer I was writing in Microsoft Word at the beginning when I was writing like short sketches, you know? And
so
I was
did
like,
many of us.
I was like, how do they censor the dialogue, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's where I started. And the contest, though, came about because a friend of mine who was also an actress and a writer, you know, turned writer, had started placing in some of them, and I read her script and I thought it was really good. And you know, sometimes people read stuff of others and they go, wow, that's good, I could never do that. But I read stuff and I go, wow, that's great, I wonder if I can, you know, like, because we had similar backgrounds. She was an actress, like, she didn't have a background in writing. And so I was like, if she can do that, maybe I can do that. And so I started doing that and placing in the contest. Really, I would love to say that, like, oh, I'm so confident and it doesn't matter what other people think. But frankly, we're in a business where it does matter what other people think. And so placing those contests helped me just kind of calibrate, like, how well am I doing? You know, like, am I writing to a professional level? Like, are people responding to it? You know, because without that feedback, I only had feedback of people who knew me. And so even though sometimes people would be very honest of, like, this is what I think you should change, for the most part, feedback was like, yeah, you're fine. I was like, well, what does that mean? I don't know, you know? So the contest really helped me go, okay, look, like 9,000 people submitted to this contest and I came up in, you know, the top 3%. Like, that feels pretty good, you know? And so that really helped me kind of get my sea legs as a writer.
So tell me, so how many years are we talking about here that you were developing your craft, and what was your writing habit like?
I guess I started writing seriously like 3 or 4 years ago, you know, but like I said, I had all that training of knowledge without doing, you know, the whole time of acting. And so when I started writing, the first thing I did, so as an actor, I auditioned for the CBS Diversity Showcase. And the way that showcase works at the time, they had the actors writing the sketches that would be performed for the showcase.
Interesting.
And so I did not get into that showcase about 5 times. And they were like, hey, you've auditioned so many times, like, why don't you come be a writer for us? I honestly don't know why they asked me to. I feel very lucky because I don't know. I really don't know, because they were like, come be a writer. And I was like, I've never written anything. But that was my gateway because it was sketch comedy and it was short. And so I, you know, cut my teeth there, and I took some sketch classes at UCB that really taught me things that I think I inherently understood from being a performer, but really helped me understand structure and, like, genre and, you know, what to do for each genre, right? And so that helped me get started also with my producing, because when I decided to produce some short films, I went back to some of those sketches that I originally wrote for the UCB classes. And so my process was really no process, like, just kind of like, how do I do this? Let me take a class. Like, let me try these short things. And then really, as I said, as I gained more confidence, I started to write longer things. And the first time I wrote a feature, I asked a friend to write it with me because I still wasn't like 100% sure. And that came about because my manager, who managed me as an actor, was like, I think you actually are a good writer and you should try this. And he gave me the idea for the feature that we ended up writing. And so, but that I was doing, you know, in between acting and in between my job that kept me alive, you know. And so I would just write whenever I found time and a little bit of inspiration. I mean, it was tough to, some people are like, oh, I write 8 hours a day. And I'm like, well, good for you. That's not realistic right now.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that even if I had all the time and money in the world. Like I need time to think and like walk and just be like, what am I doing? I need a lot of time for that still. And, but then when I write now, my process is like, okay, think, write, write those thoughts down and hone it into first I usually write what I call loose thoughts. And that's just like, it could be anything. Like, this is a story about a woman who like fell asleep one day and then like woke up and she was, I don't know, on top of a volcano. I don't know, right? No one's going to steal that idea, so I feel fine saying that.
Yeah.
But so I'll write my loose thoughts. Then I'll start to shape it into more of like beats of like, well, this happens in the beginning, this happens in the middle, this happens in the end. And then I'll shape that into a more formal outline, and then I'll finally write, And I have a friend who's a showrunner and a mentor to me, and he one day like looked at my prep. He was like, bring your outline to me, and I brought it. And he was, I don't even have to read that to know that's not enough, And he was, because it was like 3 pages long, and he was like, it should probably be like 15 pages long, because it was for a 1 hour drama pilot. And so, but I had never seen someone's outline before. So he sent me his, and I was like, oh, this is how you outline, So there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know, but I was like trying to do. I just didn't know how to do it. And so it is helpful to learn from others and see what they do and, ask for help in that way. And so, I forget where I was going with the story, but I think what I wanted to say was, so all of those steps along the way, this was the goal that he gave me, was that like writing is the reward. The work is the thoughts and the outlining and the preparation. And then like writing is the fun part,
Right.
So that's kind of how I look at it now. So the bulk of my time in terms of process goes towards preparation. And then I can write like pretty quickly when it comes time, because I've done so much prep work up until then.
Yeah, a lot of people wonder in terms of when you hear about the process in a writer's room, it seems like you have to write the script so fast, and yet you've done all of that legwork in the writer's room, and so the writing part should happen quickly, I would think.
Yeah, so I'm still a pretty new writer when it comes to being in a writer's room, and so I only have 2 experiences that I can talk to, which is Gossip Girl and Dynasty. And in Gossip Girl, and in Dynasty, for that matter, both of my rooms have been so supportive, so wonderful. And so we broke the whole story together. And in Gossip Girl, the number 2 person walked me through each scene. And then I felt so ready to write. And on Dynasty, I'm actually about to write my first episode of Dynasty. And that process also still happens, although I think the showrunner is actually very hands-on for Dynasty and walking through and being like, this is what I want. And so when I wrote my Gossip Girl episode, I said to one of the other writers, I was like, I feel like I'm transcribing, right? Like, I'm just like, oh, this is what they said. Okay. Because it was that developed and that detailed. Yeah. And then you put your own spin on it. You have to figure out like the connections and stuff like that. But for the most part, a lot of that work is done. But I do have friends who are in other types of rooms that don't have that same like community breaking as much as I've been lucky enough to have. So I really love what I've been able to do in the rooms that I've been in. It's been wonderful.
Very cool. Yeah, when you have a good room like that, try to stay there.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna take a quick sponsor break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the HBO Writers Program and also how you got staffed on those shows. DrivingFootage.com provides 4K 9-angle driving plates for film and television. Over 14,000 clips are available for locations all around Southern California, with more areas coming soon. A fully equipped camera car with height-adjustable rig is available for custom shoots and second-unit photography. Visit DrivingFootage.com for details. AVGearGuide.com provides computer and gear rentals serving the LA area, including laptops with Final Draft, as low as $9 a day with long booking rates available. They also scan photos, documents, video and audio tapes, and film reels to digital, so you can easily share with your friends and family. Not only can you scan prints as low as 25 cents, slides and negatives as low as 33 cents, and import videotapes as low as $7.99. Mention the name of the TV Writer Podcast and you will get 10% off your order. Visit avgearguide.com for details. Full disclosure, I do own both of these companies. By supporting them, you help me bring new in-person video interviews to you. And we're back. So I know that you were in the HBO Writers Program, and typically these fellowships are massive things for springboarding careers. Tell me about that program, how you landed the spot in the program, and then how that led to your first staff gig.
Yeah, so you are not wrong that this was like just a game changer in my life. I applied to it once before. I didn't even make it to the next round, I think. Mm-hmm. And so this time, so what happened was I decided to really like focus on my writing. And when I felt ready, I would reward myself by hiring a consultant, like mm-hmm. a coach, not a writing coach, but like a business coach. Mm-hmm. And that coach was Carol Kirshner, who I know.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And so Carol, like, I love her. I could not mm-hmm. speak more highly. And she helped me put together my application. She also read my script and let me know it was good enough to go forward. You know, like mm-hmm. she was like, this is definitely competitive, you know. If your listeners listen to her stuff, I'm sure she talks about like having 2 blazing hot pilots or samples. And so she was like, yeah, this is blazing hot. And I was like, all right. So she helped me put everything together. And the way that it worked is I made it to the next round where they asked for a second script, sent that in, made it to the next round where they did a phone call. Phone call was incredibly painful because you're talking to 4 people that you can't see and you've never met before. Oh, wow. And so I was like, oh my God, this feels so awkward, but made it to the next round. Next round was the in-person interview where they ask you to pitch 3 ideas for shows. Oh, wow. Could not have expected it to be even more painful than the phone call. I mean, it was torture. At some point, you know, I'm pitching my second idea and the head of the program goes, all right, yeah, we get it. You can move on to the next one. And I was like, I was only like halfway through. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Okay, you know. You know, but I think part of it for people who are applying to those programs, like part of it is also to see who you are and how you react to criticism. So they might not have liked the idea anyway, but I also think part of it was just to be like, what are you going to do, right? Yeah. Like, that's this business. And so I think that part of the reason I got in was that I was like, all right, moving on, you know. And so I got in and it was wonderful. And so the way the HBO one works is that it's a 1-week full-time boot camp where you go into HBO and, you know, you do various exercises and talking about writing, talking about yourself, like who you are as a writer and how you sell that to someone. And then, and also they brought in so many amazing guests. When I did it, Chernobyl had just come out. They brought in Craig Mazin, like Craig Mazin, like, you know, reads my thing and gives me notes, like, wow. That's pretty cool, right? So, and a bunch of other guests like that, you know, because they're HBO, they can do that. And I was lucky that I got staffed really quickly. So I actually didn't even get to do a lot of the rest of the program because after that boot camp, it met once a month for ongoing, you know, guests and development and whatever. And I was staffed at that point. Wow. And so I'm sure your question is like how do you get staffed and representation through the program? So I'll tell you quickly what happened was because I got into the program, my manager who I told you like repped me as an actor was also now helping me develop into a writer. And so he contacted Paradigm and was just like, hey, I have this writer who just got into the HBO program. Do you want to read her script? And they were like, sure. And they did. And then they were like, yeah, we want to rep you. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, it really was like magic. You know, I know it doesn't happen like this for everyone, but the HBO program was the catalyst to that. And Paradigm is the reason that I even got, you know, I got that interview with the showrunner, that meeting for Gossip Girl. And that was the first job I ever met on, and I got it, and I was like, this doesn't even feel real.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
I like to think it's after 15 years of being rejected so many times as an actor that like a little bit of karma came back my way. You know?
Yeah. Very, very cool. And so talk about being in the room for the first time. What was that like?
Um, it's hilarious because, you know, like I told you, when I first started writing, I was writing in Microsoft Word because I didn't even know what Final Draft was. Well, going into the room was kind of like that because I never had been in a room before. And even, you know, a lot of writers work their way up. So even when they're not writing or contributing in that sense to the room, they're in there as assistants, like they know how it works. I had no idea. So like I brought my computer and went into the room and everyone was like, why do you have a computer? Like, I was like, how else do we like take notes or like write? Like we're writers, right? But they're like, oh, and like there's a writer's assistant who takes all those notes. Like, I mean, simple things like that. I had no idea what it was like to be in a room, you know? But I think the good part is that I like talking to people and figuring stuff out together. So I adjusted quickly, but it was like even the logistical stuff that I was like, how do we do this? Like, are we allowed to get up and go to the bathroom, like get a snack, or do we ask? But, like, is it like class, you know, like school? So that kind of stuff was just figuring out. But I mean, Gossip Girl was probably the best job I could have as a first-time writer. It was so supportive. People were wonderful. And so I think I just lucked out that I got to learn and make mistakes in a very supportive environment.
And who was the showrunner?
His name is Josh Safran. He's done a bunch of other shows, including the original Gossip Girl, but also like Quantico. He had a show on Netflix that recently came out. Oh my God, I'm blanking on it. It's a musical show, Soundtrack, and then a bunch of other stuff. So he's a very experienced showrunner, and I think he put together a really inclusive room, which was awesome to be. And so, it was a great experience.
Very cool. And how long were you on that show?
So I was on for a season, and usually I didn't know this either, so that's why I'm going to talk about it, is that most contracts tend to be 3 seasons. The option is at their discretion, right? Like if they want you back, you have to go back, but if they don't want you back, too bad. And so, but Gossip Girl was just a 1-season deal. And my agent was like, this is amazing, because agents don't like you to be locked up, right? Like they want to be able to get you other better stuff and renegotiate the contract and stuff like that. And so my agent was like, this is amazing. Like we never get to see this. And, I think it was because Gossip Girl is for HBO Max, which hadn't launched yet, and they weren't really sure exactly what was going to happen. And so I finished my season on Gossip Girl, and then the pandemic hit. And so Gossip Girl season 1 production got stopped. And in the meantime, I was lucky enough to get staffed on Dynasty. And so what ended up happening, though, from what I understand, is Gossip Girl is actually back in the room to continue. Since production was stopped, they decided to write more, but I already had a new job, so I couldn't.
Interesting. Okay. And then, because often you wouldn't be let go in that situation.
Right, but since it was only a 1-season deal, it was done, you know? So.
Very cool. So talk about Dynasty. Now that has been through the pandemic. Has it been a virtual room? What has that been like?
Yeah, so I have a job where I talk with people every day that I've never met in person. We are in a virtual room. So again, thank God, like I just think my lucky stars, like Dynasty is also so supportive, so inclusive. Like everyone has checked on me. I'm not the only new writer. There are 2 other new writers as well who came on this season. So it's nice. They're both levels above me, but it's nice that there's 3 of us new people, you know. So everyone has been just beyond welcoming, and like if you need anything, just let me know, you know. But it's interesting to start a job virtually and not be able to have those side conversations that would normally happen, where you just like pop into someone's office and be like, oh, I like your shoes, you know. Like I can't see anyone's shoes, but B, there's no office, right? Like we're all on Zoom, so whatever we say goes to everyone, you know. Like you can't have just a side conversation with someone. But in a way, that's also I think like helped us communicate offline too, like with texting or emailing each other, to get a little more personal, or phone calls or whatever, that don't take place in the room.
Excuse me. So how would you say your acting experience has helped you in the writer's room?
I think what's helped the most is that I'm not scared to talk in front of people. And what I think a lot of writers don't know is that when you work in television, you're constantly talking in front of people, right? Like you think like writers are like, "Oh, I'm writing by myself," but like in television, you're like, "Hey, everyone, this is my idea. I'm going to pitch it to you. Like I have to hear your feedback," you know. So as an actor, I think I'm pretty comfortable with that, and not being afraid to like present an idea just the way I would present myself as an actor. And the other thing is that I literally have no feelings left, because as an actor, people will talk about what you look like, what you sound like, and in a negative way, you won't get 99% of jobs. And so I don't take that personally anymore. And so when people would critique my writing, I just go, oh, okay. It's like what I said in the HBO thing, where you're like, all right, like, I get it. Sure. And whereas I know other friends of mine who are writers that take it very, very personally, and you can see them be like, no, look, you didn't understand that because this is what's really happening. And I'm like, well, that's not what I read, and so now I think that's a really helpful skill to be like, all right, I get what your criticism is. And that doesn't mean that I take all the criticism, but it does mean that I can understand it and process it without it hurting my feelings, and maybe to go deeper, to go, okay, you're seeing this thing, I don't agree with it, but it means something. Maybe there's something I can do to fix it, something's missing, and maybe you're pointing out a detail, but it's really like a bigger idea that needs to happen, or whatever, so I think acting helped in that way.
So tell me about, so you've written a few features now, and you've written and directed shorts and that kind of thing. Is that something that you plan to continue, or was that just sort of a means to an end?
That's a great question. I think shorts for the most part are done, right? Like that was the means to an end. That was practice. That was getting notice, that was learning. And features, I certainly would continue to write features, particularly in the downtime between seasons or jobs or whatever. And I do have a lot of ideas that I'm interested to explore that are more suited for feature world than TV world. So definitely open to continuing that avenue. And if I need to make a short to get a feature made, I would do that, Yeah. But I wouldn't make a short anymore just for the fun of it. Yeah. Well, and who knows? Maybe.
And you've also written several pilots, including ones that won or were placed in screenwriting competitions. Talk about like, are you still developing? What are you passionate about as you're developing?
Yeah. So when you become a TV writer, for the most part, you're not allowed to develop television at the beginning levels, right? And so
at least until you're a producer.
Yeah. And so I can't like develop really right now, but I was able to carve some stuff out in both the Gossip Girl and the Dynasty contracts. And what that means is that they go, you can't develop, but you can just develop this thing, So one of the things that I was able to carve out was a pilot, or was a project that I was developing with Aaron Kaplan. Aaron Kaplan is like a huge TV producer, has a million shows on TV. And that came through Paradigm. They made the introduction. Aaron met me and was like, let's make a TV show. And I was like,
okay.
Okay, yeah, sure. That just happens. Okay, cool. So we developed that together, where basically he had some IP that was like, this is what we want to do. We think you're the writer for it. And so they gave me like a very bare bones, like, we want a thing at a place with these type of people, And I took that and developed an idea where they would go, okay, we like this, but not that. And then, so we developed it, basically to the point right before you would write a pilot. And so we knew all the characters, we knew the season arcs, we knew what the pilot would entail in broad strokes, that kind of stuff. And then we took that out and pitched it to various companies. So this was my first time through this process, was with Aaron Kaplan. And
wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I learned a lot. We didn't sell it, but I am so glad we did it, so that now I know when I have my own stuff that I want to develop, or maybe going back to Aaron or someone else, that I now know that process. But it was funny because it's hard to find people to ask, like, how does this work?
Yeah.
Like there aren't a lot of articles or, stuff like that on there. And so my biggest advice to anyone who's listening is like, if you're like me, and because I'm a planner, I want to know like each step along the way so I know what to do properly. And like there isn't that.
Right.
And so you kind of just have to go with the flow and do what you can. And so even in that development process, they asked me to like write a pitch, and I asked a friend of mine who's a co-EP level, and he was like, just write like a 3-page thing. And then I did that, and they were like, oh no, we wanted something much longer than that, and I was like, oh, all right, but it was in a way good, because in the 3-page thing, they were still able to tell me what they liked and didn't like. And then I took that and made it into like a 15-page thing, and so our pitch ended up being, I think it was around 35 minutes when I would speak it to pitch it. So so that people know the way that it works basically is you write your pitch and then you present it. So again, as an actor, like that part of it was really easy for me. I know Shonda Rhimes tells the story of like selling Grey's Anatomy, that she was just like reading it like, oh my God, because she hates talking in front of people trying to sell something, but it was so good that they still bought it anyway. So luckily, if you're not a great pitcher, I think you can still sell your writing, but it helps to be able to speak persuasively in front of people.
Very, very cool. We're going to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about your volunteering, because you've done quite a bit of it. Operation Checks and Balances, SAG-AFTRA Los Angeles Local Board of Directors, on the Diversity Committee, Women's Committee, More Committee, Low Budget Committee. Talk about what this means to you and your passion for that.
Sure. So I feel like I have benefited from the help of others. And that might be the direct help of someone reaching down and going like, hey, let me help pull you up. Like you're trying to do this, I'll read your script, whatever. But I also feel that I've received benefit from my unions, right? And like all the work that has gone into protecting my rights as a worker. And so it's important to me to give back. And that's why I served on the SAG-AFTRA local board in Los Angeles for 4 years, and I did those various committees. And look, like union service is sometimes boring, sometimes annoying, always educational, and always beneficial, I think, to a great number of people besides myself. And so I highly recommend it, and I hope as I continue to be a writer to get involved with the WGA. And then I think that also goes for politically, in our nation, and that I am so privileged in my life. Like how can I help others is the way I think about it. And so I'm very active that way. And so in terms of what you mentioned, Operation Checks and Balances, that was a political accountability group that I started with some friends of mine after the 2016 election. And, it was a bunch of people who were like, wow, we've really been lucky this far. And we all thought we were informed. We all thought we did stuff like, oh, I made a phone call, or I donated some money or whatever. And then we were like, wow, we really haven't done enough. And so we decided to form this group to be accountable to each other. And so what we do now, and we're still in existence, 4 years later, is that we tell each other what we did in the last 30 days and what we're going to do in the next 30 days, So we just had a meeting where we were lucky enough to get the co-founder of Indivisible, Leah Greenberg. And so she came and talked to us and said, like, this is what you have to do. Like, these are the things that are most important. These are the things that will help change this election. And so after she finished speaking, we all went around and said, all right, well, this is what I'm committing to doing, and like, I'm committing to making phone calls twice this month. I'm committed to texting 5 times a week, whatever it is, And so one of the things that I'm doing personally is I just signed up to be a trainer with Field Team 6. And Field Team 6 is a proudly and legally partisan group that registers Democrats to vote. Yeah. And so it was actually started by Jason Berlin, who is a TV writer in Los Angeles. I don't know him, but I drive, and so I'm going to be training people to make calls into Michigan, registering people who have been purged from the voter list. And so a lot of people don't know that they've been purged and they're not registered to vote. And so with Michigan in particular, also, it's not an automatic mail-in ballot the way we have it in California. In California, they're sending them to us, and that's that, as long as you're registered to vote. In Michigan, not only do you have to be registered, you also have to apply for a mail-in ballot. So that adds time to the whole system. So that's why we're calling into them and saying, like, hey, we can help you register online right now. It only takes 3 minutes. So I'm trying to multiply my effect, like not just be a caller, but also like train people to do it, so that I know, like, okay, I might not be doing it today, but I got like 10 other people who are doing it, you know? And so, so that's my little plug. If anyone wants to join, I'll be training people every Sunday from now until the election, from 11 to 12:30 Pacific time. It's an hour and a half an hour of training and 1 hour of calling. And then you help us save the world.
Very cool. I wish I could vote. I won't be a citizen yet by that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Working on it.
Well, you can make calls if you want. Haha.
Cool.
You don't have to be a citizen to make calls. And you don't. Yeah. And also, if any minors are out there listening, you can still volunteer even if you're underage of voting.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Very cool. And I will have the info about that in the description of the podcast, so people can click and find out more about it.
Awesome.
Cool. So the last section here is just advice to greener writers. I mean, you haven't been doing the writer's room very long, but you've been in the industry a long time. So what mistakes do you see people making around you, people that are breaking in, either in interviews, on the page, in the writer's room, or as you've been working your way as an actor? What do you see people doing that they could do better?
That's a great question, and it's tough to tell people what to do better, because some people, one person can do it right and one person can do the same action and it's not the same, right? And so this is what I think. Now that I have a little tiny smidgen of success, more people have been reaching out to me, and I'm totally fine with people reaching out to me, but it's a lot of strangers now. Whereas before I used to, my friends would reach out to me because that's who I knew, and no one knew me. And so what I've found is that there is a great range of people and skill who reach out to me now. And I always want to help people. But I think you need to know that you're already a pretty good writer if you're going to ask me to read your script, because that takes a lot of time and effort from me, because I don't just give it a cursory reading. Like, I really am reading to try to help you. But if it is not professional quality yet, you shouldn't waste your ask on me right now, because I'm only going to read one thing of yours, you know? And so that's what I would say is, like, ask your friends, ask your teachers, ask the people who know you and love you for that hard work of getting you to be a better writer. Because then you can ask me or some other stranger, once you're good, to help you move forward. Because I can only help you move forward if I think you're good, right? That, like, I can't recommend you for a job if the script I read isn't good. I'm not going to give it to someone else, right? As much as I might want to help this person. So I think that's the important thing. I met with a really prolific film writer, TV writer. I mean, like, he's done everything. And he said, all right, I asked him to meet for coffee. And that's something that I think people can do, and it doesn't take too much time. And you can even do it on Zoom or Skype or phone or whatever, right? Like, people don't even have to go anywhere right now. And a lot of people have a little extra time because of the pandemic. That's like one of the weird good things about it right now, is that people have a little extra time and they're willing to help more. So you can say, like, hey, can I talk to you? That's a give that most people will try to give you if they can, right? But then, so I met this writer and we had a great conversation. He said, okay, I'll read your script, but send me your best one, because if I don't like it, it's over. Basically that was the thing. And so I was like, oh God, what's my best one? But but that's where the contest kind of came in helpful, that I go, oh, well, this one placed in these 3 contests and this one didn't place at all, so I'm not going to send that one. So I say, like, if you're trying to figure out if you're good or not, like, that's where those contests come in handy. And if you're placing, I think you're probably, like, fairly close, you know, but if you're not placing, I think you probably need a little more work.
Yeah.
You know, and again, those contests, like, it's all subjective. I don't know who's reading, you know, but that's this business anyway. So you might as well, you know, get some outside opinions before you waste your favor from me or from some showrunner or whatever, you know.
Yeah. And spend some money. Paid consultants can evaluate scripts, and you're not wasting your golden tickets with the real writers.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's tough because I get, you know, money's tight for everyone when you're trying to start this thing, you know. So it can be hard, but that's why I say, like, use your network first. Once they think you're pretty good, then you can expand, do the contest, do the paid consultants, whatever, you know, and then, you know, once that's good, then you can move forward.
Yeah, and an interviewee that I was speaking to recently talked about how when your writing is good, it will sell itself.
Yeah, I hate that, and it's true. You know, like, my manager, I remember, you know, for a while, I was like, we got to get an agent. And he was like, Elaine, when it's good enough, the agent will come. And I was like, no, stupid. I don't like that.
Yeah.
But it's true, you know, and so I was like, all right, just put my head down and keep getting better as a writer. You know, I have people who send me their very first script, and I'm like, why would you send me your very first script? Like, you're probably not good, really, until your 6th one, maybe, you know? And so, like, that was something I had to learn too, which is why I'm sharing it, that, like, my earlier scripts are not as good as my later scripts, and there's reason for that. Because I learned, you know? And so, I mean, like, I'm like, they're still pretty good, but, you know, they could be better. And so that's something, like, yes, continue to write, get better, learn, listen to other people, read books, whatever. Like, I didn't go to film school, but I learned a lot. So that's what other people can do. And you got to read, like, as many scripts as you can, I think. Like I said, circling back to the beginning, as an actor, that I read, you know, I've read like 3,000 scripts or more.
Yeah.
So, you know, I really knew what a script looked like and felt like I could feel it in my bones, so that when I started writing, I knew what to do.
Yeah. So what do you know now that you wish you had known when you started?
I wish I had known that it was easier than I thought it would be. Meaning, people told me when I first started acting, which was like a million years ago. So honestly, like, YouTube was just coming out, and everyone's like, you got to create your own content. And I was like, no, I'm not going to. I don't want to, you know? And, like, it took so long to get to the point where I was like, I actually do want to create my own content. But I think part of it was, like, I was scared that it would be too hard, that I would fail, you know, that I wouldn't know how to do it, that I would waste my time, waste my money. But, like, frankly, that was the thing that made all the difference in the world, was to just start doing it. And so that's what I mean about it being, it's not that hard. Like, in my head, it's much harder to write a script than it is to actually write a script. It's the same thing of going to the gym. Like, it's much harder to think about going to the gym than to just, like, once you work out, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I'm doing this, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the same thing. And I didn't know that when I was thinking about starting. And so, you know, I wasted a lot of time and nervous energy of just like, should I, can I? And the answer is yes, you should, and yes, you can.
Very cool. If you can think of one thing that helps you make it long-term in this business, what is it?
I laughed because I'm like, I don't know. Like, who knows if I'll make it? You know, I've been in the business a while, but I haven't been successful for a very long time, you know?
But I'll say this. I mean, you seem to have a very positive attitude, even though what you described is as you're going through the acting, you didn't necessarily get the biggest roles, and you were doing short films and things, and I mean, you had to enter a lot of contests before you finally hit on the opportunities, but you're very positive. So talk about that. Like, what is it that keeps you positive through all this? Yeah, I mean, the COVID happened, but you're very positive. Talk about that.
Yeah. When I was like, why am I very positive? I don't know. It's just like dumb tenacity. I think, you know, I'm not always positive. I think that's the true answer. I'm happy today. You know why? I got a job. I love it. Like, yeah, I'm talking to you. This is fun, you know? But there are times that it's terrible. And so I guess I would say, like, it's really okay to feel that. And there were a lot of times I wanted to give up. And I would say, honestly, it was every 6 months for like 15 years that I was like, I think I got to give up. I'm tired of this. Like,
so what got you through that?
I didn't want to give up.
Well, yep. Simple as that.
It's like, I know I have to give up. I don't want to give up. But you know what's interesting? Actually, becoming a writer felt like I was giving up, that I had failed as an actor. And I had to come to terms with that myself, of just being like, but I like this more. I like writing more. Like, what? It's not a problem to go do something that I prefer. So that's the other thing. Like, look, I want everyone who wants to be a writer if that's what they want. But if they find something they like more, like, by all means, go do that. Like, it is okay to not do the thing that you set out to do. But if you like the thing that you set out to do and you still want to do it, then, like, yeah, you're going to have really hard, terrible times. And probably the only thing that keeps you in is, like, just that feeling of, like, I'm not going to stop, you know? But sometimes you hit a wall and you go, I do want to stop, because it doesn't feed me. It doesn't, like, help me. It doesn't make me feel better, you know? And acting didn't make me feel good anymore. Like, even when I got an acting job, I was like, oh, I'm grateful for the job, but, like, you know? Whereas writing doesn't feel that way, at least not yet. And I hope it never does. But, like, right now, like, getting Gossip Girl, getting Dynasty was, like, so exciting and, like, so happy, you know? So I don't know. It's a thing I can't really explain, of, like, why do you stay and how do you know? I think it's personal to everyone. But for a while, it was just like, I didn't want my mom to be like, told you so, you know?
Yeah. So where do you see yourself 5 years, 10 years?
I would love to be a showrunner. I would love to create my own shows and be in charge of them. So I created my own web series and called Doxed, and we won a whole bunch of awards and a whole bunch of festivals. It was very exciting. And that was like my mini showrunner training, you know? I wrote it, I directed it, I starred in it, because I guess I have a really big ego, but but I was like, if I'm going to spend all this time and energy and money, I'm going to do all the things I want to do, you know? And that's why I did it. And it was wonderful. And I love, the reason I did it is because I wanted to show that I could write a series, and granted it was short, like 5 to 7 minute episodes at the longest, but that I could tell a story episodically, because that's what I was trying to do, was to get into television, right? And so the funny thing is, like, Docs did not help me get any jobs, any agents, anything. But what it did do, it helped me, Elaine, the artist, become better at what I was doing, because I lived, breathed, like, sweat that series for a year of my life, you know? And it helped me in all aspects of my creativity and my know-how and my skill. And so even though we won all those awards, nothing came from that. Like, but it depends what you define as, like, what do you get, right? So, like, did I get a job from it? No. Did I learn how to do my job better? Yes. You know? So anyway, so I want to be a showrunner, and I want to create my own shows. And I think that my skill set is actually pretty attuned to what I think a good showrunner needs to do. Like, do I know everything? No, but I'm not saying that. But I think, like, I do know how to produce. I do know how to manage people. And I do know how to create stories, you know? And I think it would just be so awesome to get to do my own stories, you know, that I want to focus on. And to make sure that, I mean, for me, inclusion is not just a catchy thing that everyone's into right now. Like, ooh, diversity. Diversity is so hot. Frankly, can I swear on the show?
What's that?
Can I swear?
We're kind of PG.
Okay, PG. Frankly, then, I'm going to say people who talk about diversity just to talk about it, I hate them. And it's sad. But you know what? It does still, even that type of diversity helps a little because it's growing the population of the types of people who get to do these jobs. And I want to be part of that. Just the way that I volunteer, like, and take responsibility for my community a little bit. I want to do that as a showrunner too, and be like, hey, look, these are the types of shows that need to be told. You know, it's something like very, very important to me, and not just, not just like a passing phase.
Well, I can't think of a better place to end things up, unless you have any other thoughts before we go.
I'm like, I have no thoughts. That's the perfect ending. Yes.
Yeah.
No, this was really fun. Thank you. I'm glad you told me not to swear. I didn't. And I really love talking, and I hope that, hearing these type of things help other writers feel like I can do this, because, that's where I started, was just seeing someone else who wasn't a writer become a writer. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so cool. I think I can maybe do that too.
Very cool. Well, best of luck to you. I will watch for the shows coming up to see your name in the credits as the showrunner. Can't wait.
Thank you.
And that was my interview with Elaine Loh. I hope you enjoyed it. Watch for us next week as I bring an interview with Joel Thompson. Make sure to subscribe on all of the places you can find this podcast: Podbeam, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, the tvwriterpodcast.com site, or also at scriptmag.com, and now also on Pandora. And if you're on Instagram, please follow at tvwriterpodcast. Please do follow me on Twitter. @GrayJones is my handle. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do it for as little as 25 cents per episode. You can find out how you can become a patron of the podcast or a sponsor of the podcast at tvwriterpodcast.com/support. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.